call the meeting. First order of business is to establish a quorum. We have one. Next order, let's accept the minutes of the April 9th regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Any questions, discussion? All those in favor, Lauren?
So moved. Aye.
Excellent. Aye. All right, okay. Next up is to accept the minutes of the April 16th special select board meeting. Second?
For all of the festivities of summer. We're gonna do the best we can to nitpick as we have the opportunity. As we mentioned, I'm on vacation this week. I do have a couple more planned because got vacation time. Tom has some vacation time he's gonna have to use. So that's gonna inhibit some progress, but my understanding is we're gonna have somebody in June for a third person. Is that correct? So hopefully, we can hammer things out quickly with 3 people and then maybe have the opportunity to get some more cutting done. However, that's gonna be in a dangerous time of year, so I'm not sure how well we're gonna be able to pursue with that when this turns out to be Speedway 95.
Adriana, have you had any further discussions with Trevor?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and Dave just heard back from Trevor. We're gonna, I think it's May 5th. I think that week he's going to do West Shore Drive.
That'd be a huge help.
You know, that's been a dangerous one for you to plan, so.
Yeah, great.
We'll get that done soon. Looks and
Any questions for Jordy?
Fantastic.
Excellent.
thanks.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your vacation.
Oh, God. He's out there.
Is there anyone here for anything other than something already on the agenda? All right, with that, let's go to ferry service update. I see Peter online. Peter, do you have anything you wanna bring for an update?
I'm just standing by to see if anybody has any questions.
Any
Can
news
you
on
hear me?
Maggie? Yep, thank you.
Oh.
Any news
Any
on when
news on-
Maggie's back?
We can't hear you, Peter.
Yeah, any news on what?
When Maggie will be returning?
Oh, yeah, I think it was April 20th or so. So I have no update on that. I'll call him. I'll call him tomorrow and I'll have something at the Emergency Ferry Task Force tomorrow night.
Great. And yeah, as Peter mentioned, the Emergency Ferries Task Force meeting is tomorrow night. All of the bills have been printed and we anticipate potentially a ferry day hearing as early as the 29th, but I haven't heard confirmation about that. I don't know if you have
I've
heard.
not heard confirmation either, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's my understanding.
Anything else on ferry? All right, sea level rise update. Shri helped us to submit a CDS request to potentially help fund construction for Narrows updates. That is a long shot and a long process, but we'll keep our fingers crossed. We did hear that we were successful in receiving a community action grant, which will fund Shri to be our project manager for another year, which is great news. And that is about it. The next meeting is May 8th. Any questions? All right, municipal building project update. Lauren, you want to start?
Sure. Things are moving forward on all 3 projects. I should have an update on the renovations at our next meeting, depending on whether or not I'm connecting with few items in terms of the timing. But Steve will talk in a minute about the Up Island Public Safety Garage. On Monday, we'll be meeting with Ledgewood folks and Mark Olette, the architect from Steve Glad Architects, and Beth O'Mara to discuss, among other things, the timing of the health center move into the building. I just see that Beth is here. I just wondering, Beth, if you want to say anything about all the great work that you guys are doing to get ready for the move. I'm just, if there's anything briefly you want to add.
Um, we, I guess I can just say that we have a plan to make sure that none of our services are interrupted. Most importantly, emergency response services. And so we'll keep a trauma room open and ready in both buildings until we're fully moved over. And that's about it. I'll have more to offer on Monday after the meeting with Ledgewood and the architect.
Great. Yeah, things are moving really, really rapidly. We'll have a date for the punch list that Mark Olette will be doing at our next meeting. We're planning the opening. There's a lot of happening really, really quickly. And I just want to say bravo to Pete Anderson for his work as the town's owner representative. He's just done a fantastic job. And of course, Steve Pendleton. And so I can turn it over to him. Thank you.
I wish I had more to comment on. I'm pushing to get a blank contract from Rod. Rod's, the North Point Builder is a relatively smaller company. So according to Mark, our architect, they'll have something to me next week. But so I'm querying Janet earlier today and some others to see if we can utilize something that the town's used before that we can put together along with his proposal and merge the proposal in as part of the contract. He's the only update I have that is relevant is, he's requested that the town provide payments every two weeks. Can we do direct deposit or not? I think that's fine, but I said we have to make sure that those payments are aligned with deliverables, so we're paying for things that, that they're delivering. So we're in that process of moving the contract from conceptual to getting things in writing, but I don't have anything else tonight to really concrete to speak to.
Questions for Steve or Lauren? Yep,
Is the
Yeah,
money,
I don't really have to stay in on it.
is the money that's left over from the health center projects, I can't hear
Like
one.
2 cents worth.
Does that money get rolled down to the fire garage? And then if there's money left over from the fire garage, does that get rolled down to the renovations? And also, what happens with the plans where they did the change orders in the health center for different counters? I heard that they had counters designed, and then because they made a last minute change, the counters are now changed because they was too short or something. Was there any money savings on that? Or was there any materials that could be handed down to the fire department so they could use those, or we could use those for our renovations?
I would say no, and Lauren may speak, but I've seen them. They raised them up. So it's the
I
same
believe so. They were
counter,
too
but they
short.
raised them up.
Yeah, they
So
were
there's
80.
nothing extra for material
All right,
left over.
does that, were they already installed or were they?
Yes, so that's gonna cost us.
Okay, so that's gonna cost
Change
that,
orders cost.
okay. Yeah, no, I was wondering, cause I heard it was quite a holdup with that. And the reason I ask about that is because how much of a differential was there from the prior counter to the counters that got replaced? And was it necessary, and can any of that money come back to finishing up the fire garage or finish up the renovations?
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
Fred-
go ahead, Lauren.
Fred, I can say that, great questions. We're working with Ledgewood. They will complete their financial aspect of the health center. pretty soon we'll know what is left out of that money. We do think we'll see some savings. Just for instance, there is money set aside for snow plowing, which wasn't entirely used up. There are other discretionary dollars that were in there that we think that will not be spent for one thing or the other. And anything that we do not have to spend on the health center remains as a part of the overall project. So that means that that money would be available for the Up Island Public Safety
Oh,
Garage as well as
thank you.
renovations.
That's all I wanted to know. I can't hear that well when I'm on Zoom, so it's nice to be here and able to hear it. Thank you.
Any other questions on municipal building? All right, since we have so many people here, I think mostly for things under new business, I would entertain a motion to take the rest of the agenda out of order to start with new business, and then once that is concluded, to move back into upcoming meetings and subcommittee reports. Would anyone be willing to make that? Excellent. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, Lauren,
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. New business. Discuss the policy on the immigration enforcement that's been brought forward to us at our last meeting. I hope everyone has had a chance to review the materials that he sent during that meeting. It looks like we have some draft policy language. It's not, she highlighted the kind of major points of it. And basically to clearly outline the town's minimum responsibilities under federal law. So,
Are we required to put something in place?
so I don't think that this policy is necessary, but it is. But it's, yeah. But there's been a request for us to put it in place.
Right, and I'd like to about that a minute with a conversation is that I need legal. I need somebody to look this up legally, the attorney, to find out if this will hinder me in working with the federal law enforcement agencies. And the reason I ask that is because you have people that have terrorizing complaints that live on Alsboro from out of state. I have to use the FBI to investigate those. I have cases that sometimes do kind of go in hand. I can't get into them, but they could involve border patrol for intel information and stuff like that. I just want a legal interpretation of this would help, would this hurt me working with other federal agencies? My next question is, and I thought about a discussion I had with somebody about this, will this make us an asylum city? Will this designate us an asylum city? And what price will we have to pay for that? So is it better off knowing that we do not do this? And now you're putting a policy on your police department. It's not for the town of Alsboro, it's for your police department. So if you're gonna put policies on your police department, I think we should at least get a legal interpretation of that. Because I gotta put it in my policy book. You're basically telling me not to work with law enforcement to some extent.
Okay, I think it would be helpful, I mean, I think I'm happy to get a legal opinion about,
That's all I.
questions and concerns that you have. I think it would probably be helpful to if you could put some of like the specific questions that you have in writing
I
so
will.
that we could
I will.
share those with Kristen and ask for her legal opinion, and if she feels like she needs to consult with somebody else, that
Because
she could do
Every
that.
time somebody complains and says Fred was working with the federal government, I'm not always at liberty to disclose the information of what I'm working on. I can guarantee you that it's probably not immigration, because I don't have time for that, as I explained before. But I have to be able to work with the federal government. I can't have my hands tied. And I kind of want to make the proposal tonight that if we're gonna put something like that in place and the legal aspect comes back, that this could potentially tie my hands, that you dissolve your police department effective immediately. I'm willing to call that on, I've read it.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I want an attorney's interpretation of what that says and whether or not it could hinder me from working law enforcement. Cause I obviously don't wanna go against what you guys want me to do. You guys are the ones that employ me, but I can't have my hands tied behind my back.
Yeah.
I've already told you that I ain't touching immigration. I don't think you need to put anything in place.
Yeah.
But that's just my personal feeling.
All
Shay, it's Lauren,
Yeah.
I thought that essentially the attorney was saying that this does not go against anything, as Fred is saying, it is a separate issue. It's exclusively about ICE and immigration, and it's not tying Fred's hands with regard to any other relationship he has with the federal government or with law enforcement, broadly speaking, or the federal. So this is specifically about ICE and immigration. And I thought they made that pretty clear, and that the attorney came through saying that is legally a different issue.
But sometimes these things can walk hand in hand, but not necessarily about the same thing. And that's all I'm saying is, will this tie my hands? I know what I've read, I know what everybody's handed out, but I'd like to know, will this tie my hands? The town putting this policy in place. So what if I do a traffic stop? And it does have a situation that would go along with this. Am I gonna have everybody running around saying Fred was profiling? What's the town gonna do about that? I wasn't profiling, I was doing something I had to do. I can't select the law on what I wanna enforce. And that's the thing with me, is I really, especially last year, depended on the FBI a lot for a terrorizing and a harassment case from out of state for a person that lived on the house for it. I just need to know that there won't be anything, because if they find that the town is refusing to work in this immigration thing, is this gonna come back and bite us? Do we get considered an silent city? I don't know if that's someplace we wanna go, but I'll leave that up to you. I'm just telling you, I don't wanna have my hands tied, that's all.
No, I understand and appreciate the questions that you raise, and I think I tend to agree with Lauren. I don't think that this, my sense is that it protects you more than hinders you in this work, but if you, like I said, if you don't mind writing up kind of what your questions are so that we can send it to the attorney, then I think that
That's all I
will be
want,
helpful to make sure that
absolutely.
your specific questions, that you feel
Because
like
I
you have
will
that
work with them,
examined.
and I do work with them, and I can't have my hands tied so that evidence is getting thrown out because I went against a policy or something like that. I can't do that. I can't do that.
Yeah, I would like to just go on record, just that the last sentences in here, there is a risk, something like this puts us, draws attention to the community in a way that may be perceived by ICE, that Islesboro is a community that might be trying to harbor. And so they do bring up that risk. So I think, to your point, send us the questions. We want to make sure.
Just for clarity, what Steve was reading from is the email from Kristen Collins, our attorney, that brought that forward, just that way everybody knows what you're
Okay, yeah.
referencing, because that's not.
I'm sorry, yeah, so I just want to make sure that I think these are valid just as well as the comments and the information that was sent to us is valid as well, so a good idea.
Janice, go ahead.
Did you actually read what it says?
It says, there's a lot,
Paragraph.
I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but the
I read the
last
whole
one says,
paragraph.
okay, in general, I like the policy, that's our attorney, and think it clearly outlines the town's minimum responsibilities under federal law. You do not need to have such a policy, but it provides clear guidance that can be referred to under pressure from federal agents. Really, the only risk in this administration of putting something like this out there is that it draws attention to the community in a way that may be perceived by ICE that Islesboro is a community that might be trying to harbor illegal immigrants, a sanctuary city, parentheses, close parentheses.
My concerns is that if I'm trying to work with one of these agencies on a case that involves somebody from Islesboro that's unrelated to immigration, but somehow they interpret us as a sanctuary city, what are my options then? Because I don't know if anybody else watches the news, but it sounds like you're kind of flat out of luck after that. And I care more about people's situations than I do about interpretation of laws, in the sense that I've got to help that person that needs my help.
Can I ask a question, Shay? I think Fred, I like what Shay is asking you to do, to write something up. I want to add that I'm hoping it will be very, very clear what you write up about naming a situation that you can imagine.
I'm
So
not gonna name a
describing,
specific situation.
not in terms of naming people or anything, but you have a stop sign, you pull someone over, and what the scenario that you think will present potential conflict of interest. One
I'm
or two
gonna ask the
examples.
same question that I just asked. Will having a policy, if interpreted with the federal government, is that we're a sanctuary city, will that hurt my ability and trust system with the federal agencies to be able to work with them? And the other thought of that is too, is could that potentially affect us in any federal grants that we're looking for, such as MEMA, such as FEMA sending money to MEMA, or direct federal grants, or any kind of funding? I think before we have a knee-jerk reaction about this, I think we really need to find out more. And I'm not saying this to hold things up. I have real concerns with this. And I know that all the other departments, nobody signed on to this. Even Wells, they backed out of it. Because as the chief down there said, I just wanted to get the funding for my folks. The training, I'm sorry. I just wanted to get the training for my police officers. I didn't get into this to be out there with ice vests on, because they have a lot of traffic down there. And some of their traffic I worry about in the mid-coast, and I have to do these investigations. And if my hands are tied, what am I supposed to do? I'll just tell everybody, call local office and see if they'll handle it. It comes to me first.
We have a question from Gabe. Go ahead.
I think Fred is right to be concerned about these things. And I think the tension that exists is that this policy is essentially directing Fred to do what he already does, right? Fred wants to operate by the law, and Fred does do that, right? And so the tension that exists, as you see in the broader context of the conversation we're having in the country, is that there are others who are operating, at least in my opinion, outside of what the law is. And this is something that is trying to essentially reaffirm what Fred already does. And Fred's point about maybe this isn't necessary is also possible, right? And maybe this is something the town just wants to put forward to say, this is what the town believes, this is what the town thinks is right. The town wants to follow the law. When you have tension between branches of the government about whether the executive branch is going to follow the judicial branch, right? And is that appropriate for the town to get involved? Does that make us a target, right? And the answer is maybe, but what does that say about us, that we're having the conversation about the town of Islesboro, who is directing the law enforcement, who already follows the law, to follow the law, and we have to worry about whether that makes us a target from the federal government for grants, for anything else, right? That's a concern to even have that conversation. And I'm not saying it's not a real conversation, because it certainly is. I don't know where that leaves us going forward with a policy like this, because I do think that, I mean, knowing Fred and knowing him for a long time, I know how much he cares, I know how much he tries, I know he's not going to break the law, I know he's not trying to go against, but the other side of that is, as I think noted in that email from the attorney, you might end up with officials pushing Fred to do things which are otherwise unconstitutional, or have, let's say, minimal justification or authority to do something like that. And then where does that leave us? And the answer is, I mean, it's not great all the way around. And the idea about having a policy like this in place to try to essentially spell out what we think Fred should be doing, what Fred is actually already doing right now, I think generally is good. I also acknowledge Fred's concern about, I mean, I don't think that you have a real concern about the federal government saying that this is not, this is sort of what the law is. I think that's what it is. But then you might have somebody from the federal government singling you out, singling the town out and saying, for example, like, oh, this is a sanctuary city, when what you have is in fact I would think a pretty reasonable explanation about what the law is in this area and what Fred is and should be doing. And that's not to say that I've got a good solution, because I think all the things are true at once. And I think that Fred is following the law. This is a sort of a description of what the law is in this area as outlined by the town's attorney. And yet the town still might be subject to some sort of retribution or singling out by the federal government by so that's also real, because that's something that you see happening in the broader context of the country too.
And one of the things that we can do is we can put operational, this is what I prefer to do, is put operational guidelines within our policy and guideline book that says, what's the one thing that we used last week that helped us a lot, that algorithm. So for the EMS runs, well, now we have one that says, if there's an immigration issue, we will stop for the duration of the business at hand, which is if I'm stopping them for a violation of a motor vehicle law, I'm only supposed to stop them as long as it takes to do the business. So if I'm giving the guy a verbal warning or the girl a verbal warning, I give them a verbal warning. If a hit comes up on the radio, I already have operational guidelines that says in that, at that point, so like calling Life Flight or calling the ferry boat, our job is to call somebody else. And at that point, if they can't be there within a reasonable amount of time to do their business, or if there's an arrest warrant, I gotta do what I gotta do. That's that court ordered arrest that was listed in there. But if they are here and anybody, it doesn't have to be Hispanic, it doesn't have to be anything, but somebody's got an immigration issue, that isn't mine to deal with. I will tell that agent per my guidelines, which I'm happy to write, that says, because we are not in a capacity to handle this, we don't have holding facilities, we don't have extra officers, we're a part-time department, we're gonna have to let this individual go unless you can have somebody here within the hour, or whatever we choose to do. But I really don't wanna hold that person, because if they haven't violated a motor vehicle law or a criminal violation, I just soon let them go as look at them, because I'm actually violating what I swear to every year. So it's all I can do is tell you what I can tell you, but I would put guidelines in place. I'm willing to put guidelines in place to how we do this.
I think Melissa had raised her and then Ben.
Was it 3 years ago? We had the FBI, Waldo County, and another agency that all disembarked on our island. Were you asked to help with any of those?
I was on the phone with dispatch from Portland, telling them what I knew and.
Right, but you were questioned,
Yeah.
everything like that?
Yep.
Did they ask you to detain anybody, hold anybody,
No,
take
I was
anybody
out of
over?
town.
So we are small enough that they bring their own people.
Yep.
This is something that should be brought to Waldo County. This is not something that is even in the realm of Islesboro.
And they have a local border patrol agent, because I see him on Route 1 all the time, even before this all went down.
Yeah.
You see him around.
Like, I could see the guidelines and stuff like that, but in the grand scheme of the
Yeah.
blip,
We're not away.
they are going to bypass Fred or whoever our new officer is or anything else. Because if they're going to do a sweep, if they're going to do a raid, if they're gonna do any of that kind of action, they don't contact us. They don't ask permission. They don't send up a red flag and say, meet us at the ferry. It is essentially beyond the scope of what they would even trust him with.
No.
No offense.
Yeah.
But that is strategically based off of what we all saw literally 3 years ago.
Right.
That's my only
Right.
statement that I have on it.
Ben.
Was that the last time there were federal agents on the island, if you're at liberty to say?
I
How
can tell
often- Let me
you,
ask you this, how often would you say you deal with federal agents on Islesboro?
physically on Ellsboro?
Yeah.
Not a lot,
Like,
but I deal with them through, phone and stuff like that. And usually it's because they're in a field office down in Boston and New York, where the issue came from, one time Los Angeles. So what we do is we have that partnership where I will send them information about somebody from their area. And they will go and they will investigate. Usually it's an internet crime or it's a harassment terrorizing by internet. And then they take care of that because I have no jurisdiction down there and they have federal jurisdiction. So what it does, it gives me capabilities to see my victim through and them assisting me. It's like if they called me and said, we're trying to put a federal warrant on somebody, can you let us know if they leave the island? I'm gonna assist them. I'm gonna assist them.
So
I'm not gonna assist them with tracking down immigration issues. I ain't got time for that. That's why I can't do as much hunting stuff anymore. I got a lot of stuff to do.
So what I tried to do in the wording of this is to make it as specific as possible so that it could then be transferred into a SOP document.
Yep, yeah, I saw that.
And so the idea being is that there is specific wording about what is called ICE detainer, which is something that has been used universally across America since I think 2006 or something. They've been using this thing for a very long time. And basically what they do is they call local law enforcement and they say, we want you to hold someone for us. And it has been found in numerous federal courts all across America to be completely against the law. This is something that has been, and so, I mean, that's the main thing. And so we have specific wording in this document to ask that we not do that as a town.
I have to do that with other law enforcement agencies.
Okay.
If they contact me and say, is so-and-so working on the island? Yes, well, we've got him under investigation for this. Can you go see him at the job site and let us know if he's there and we'll come over and see him? And I says, yeah, I can go see him, but unless you have a warrant, I'm not holding him.
Awesome. That's
I ain't gonna do that.
right here.
I'm not putting the town at jeopardy like that.
So in that sense, it's like, well, I see no issue with codifying what Fred is already doing. It seems like a no-brainer and a win-win. I also just want to specifically speak to your thing about the FBI. The wording in this document is specific to immigration agents. It has nothing to do with the FBI.
But they do work together.
Sure.
And that's, you don't get one without the other in a lot of stuff.
I also want to speak to this thing about Islesboro being targeted. First of all, Maine is being targeted as a whole by this administration. They're coming after our funding. Second of all, a cursory Google search of this shows that there are between 200 and 560 sanctuary municipalities across America and up to 13 states with sanctuary laws. If somehow we think this is going to single us out as a place that needs to get, messed with and we're going to lose our funding, which, by the way, I think we've done our best to suck up all the funding that we can before this, it clamps down. But, if we're worried about having funding targeted, then I think that's a pipe dream. I'm just gonna say.
I just think that we've already got a spotlight on us. I mean, we're in all the news shows because the two of them had that spat. And I think we're very much in the spotlight because now everything's gonna be hypersensitive about Maine. And that's why I'm saying, do we really want to do a policy that the town is telling the police department how to run law enforcement? Or do we really want to do operational guidelines that kind of follows exactly what Ben's trying to achieve? And really, we do it anyways, because I'm not gonna, if they're not under arrest by me, I'm not gonna hold them. So unless those guys are on the other side, and I could just stand there and talk with a person for a bit, I'm not gonna hold them. We don't have any place to hold them.
I also just want to speak to Melissa, what Melissa was saying. I think that I came here first because this is the closest thing to me. But I do plan on taking it to Waldo. I'm talking to Kate Blackford as well. Bangor is putting these things in place as well. There are lots of municipalities around Maine that are taking these steps because people are concerned. And I think it's a fight worth having. And if we're gonna, I don't know, I'm into it.
Could I just a question and then Janice, and then I see Beth has her hand up too online. Is this language something that is a template that other communities have put in place, or are you aware of other towns that have used this language to create a policy?
Yes, so Kate Blackford forwarded me what Bangor is working on right now, and it's very similar to this. And I'd happily forward that on to you as well.
Janice?
I just had a question, in this email, it says, the police department will not be deputized to perform arrests and detentions on behalf of ICE. is there a way that our police department could be pressured into being deputized? I mean, they might not be able to force us, but is there a chance that I could?
It's kind of a hard spot to be in because they're forcing you to go against your policies and laws, so.
So I think
Well,
that,
that's
I
my
think we're getting a
question.
little lost in translation. I didn't read that paragraph, but I mean, what she's referring to is the section in this document, which is a 287G agreement, which is similar to what the Wells Department was getting involved in, which is basically where local agents are, immigration agents, deputized local law enforcement officers, and it's like basically engaging in training with them.
That's what they wanted, was the
Yeah,
training.
exactly.
Well-
And basically this document is asking that we not do that.
Right, so my question is, basically, we can't be forced to do that, and if Fred was going to do that, would he have to bring it up to the town before he could do that?
I would contact Janet. Anytime there's a policy change. Janet's always contacted first because she's the person that deals with the police department policies. And I write policy all the time, so we go over and update her book, because she has one of our policy books. And anything that gets changed is usually in her hands right after we do it.
So it's not something that could happen behind the scenes where nobody knew it?
I'm not gonna answer that.
No, I'm saying like you could get,
No, they can't pressure him into
Right.
it and they can't make a new law that now says that he has to do it. The way that it is strategically done through ICE and Border Patrol typically, and this is coming from my former life, is they will incentivize a PD and say, I will pay for your training, I will pay for new equipment. What do you need? One of the things that we need right now is something that I'm hunting and pecking for is federal funding and a grant in order to get new equipment for the police department that is
Absolutely.
desperately needed.
Yep.
They
We
can
don't
turn
get it.
around and they can say, hey, if you do this, I'll give you X, Y, and Z. And if you have underfunded police departments that communities do not support, they are more apt to bite. And then they get the training and they get the certifications and they become deputized. It is a stick versus carrot. The stick is not applicable, and if you bite the carrot, then yes, you have the opportunity for the training and for the advancement. The former sheriff's office that I was associated with got new vehicles, got SWAT vehicles, got anything under the sun that they asked for. And it aligned with what that administration that I worked for did. That was part of it. But that was how they did it. They cannot force a police department or a community or any entity into it. They can't say, we're understaffed, you now have to.
Now, what I will say, and I think most of you guys know I'm a pretty straight shooter. I'm gonna tell you exactly what I think. So I'm willing to say this on a Zoom meeting. And this will be recorded so you can all remember this down the road. I have no desire to be involved in that. As a matter of fact, if they come up to me and try to force me into detaining an immigrant, I will take my badge off. I will take my gun off. I'll slide that cruiser over to the side of the road and I'm going home. If they want to detain me at that point, they can come detain me. And I just said that on a recorded meeting. So you guys have me held to this. This is how it's gonna be. I'm willing to call the bull where it goes. And right now, I'm telling you, I have no desire to be in this. I think this is gonna hurt the town more down the road. I do like most of your talking points, Ben. I don't have a problem with what you're doing. I just want you to know that. What I have a problem with is the police department being used, whether it's by the federal government or by groups in the town, to involve us into any type of political situations. And what's going on right now is a political situation that has some harsh realities to the people that they're dealing with, and also to the governments that don't get involved. And I don't want, I'm just telling you, I've been working in town government for a long time, and I don't want to see this. I know some of them. I deal with these people. And I don't want to see anything happen to the town of Belfast. I don't care what Bangor does. I really don't care what Bangor does. Belfast, Waldo, they can all do the same thing. What I care about is Islesboro. You got my word on that. It's recorded and it's there for everybody to watch. You can have my badge, my gun, and the whole shitting match. How's that?
Thank you, thanks, Fred. Beth, you've had your hand raised for a while. Go ahead.
Follow that, Bill.
Oh, hi. That's a tough one to follow. It kind of segues into my question though, because first I wanted to say that I know and respect Fred and I trust what he's saying. And I don't think that he needs a directive to not get involved with ICE in a way that would not respect a person's individual liberty. But that said, Fred, you're not the only person, the police person who works here. You usually are, but you occasionally take vacations. And I'm curious how our current policy or how a suggested standard operating procedure or language around your police department policy would protect you and immigrants from having civil liberties
I can't.
violated.
Yep, I can't guarantee anything on the state level. I can't guarantee anything on the county level because I don't run or work for those departments. As far as Islesboro goes, because I have been listening to what everybody's saying, again, I'm willing to write procedure and then have the AG's office look at it to make sure that we're within context, and the town attorney could look at it if she wants to. I think the AG's office is better because they deal with law enforcement law, but that we could put guidelines in place. So if we do have another Islesboro officer, which we might this year because we have one that's interested and they work over here, they're gonna have to contact me, just like Jason Trundy, Sheriff Trundy said. When they're on a stop and something like this comes up, they're supposed to call a supervisor. Well, anybody that's worked on the ambulance, a law enforcement agency, or fire department for that fact, knows they can call me anytime. When I'm on vacation, I always got my phone on, because when I'm done, I'm done. I'll never have a damn phone again. But while I'm here, you got me. And they can call me, they'll have guidelines to go by, Beth, because I hear what you're saying. But I also want to say something else, is that those people are here to protect you too. And you're not always, and I'm not saying this to be mean to anybody, but folks aren't always at liberty to know what law enforcement's working on. And I mean that, and I think that's why Wells got involved, and I bet you that until this happened, other Southern Maine departments were gonna be involved, was for the training on how to deal with these situations. Because from what I've heard, it's valuable training, not to detain people for ICE, but just the overall experience of the training. So I can't speak for any of the other departments, Beth, but I can tell you, as far as Islesboro goes, we'll have some kind of written policy, guideline.
And that, just to clarify, that written guideline that you're proposing in lieu of this town policy would prohibit any police officer that works per diem or part-time for Islesboro. It would prohibit them from detaining an immigrant for ICE. Is that correct?
Yeah, and here's an example of kind of what I'm talking about. Remember, it's an operating guideline. It tells them what to do in the situation, not so much as it bans them and you're banned from doing this. But like every police department is required to have a pursuit policy. So if somebody runs from a police officer, they have certain criteria they go by within their policies to protect them and to make sure the public safety is important. We actually have in our pursuit policy that Islesboro does not conduct high-speed pursuits. I put that in there. And that's kind of against what the Maine chiefs of police had put in theirs, but I can justify it because we don't have roads that are conducive to doing a safe chase on somebody. Would I go fast trying to get to a house on a domestic where the woman's screaming? Yeah, oh yeah. I'm gonna be tooting going there because I want to help that lady out or help that guy out. But am I gonna, no, we don't chase. And we can do wording So that it, instead of making it look like we don't want to do law enforcement, that there's a set of guidelines that says what to do in these situations. And what to do is contact your supervisor, contact the border patrol, or contact the sheriff's department or the state police and say, I'm alone today. I don't have any backup coverage. Can somebody go take this over? And that's why I mentioned the border patrol earlier, because I think where I've seen them so much on Route 1, we might actually be able to get border patrol to come here and deal with it themselves. And then we're done. I'm not gonna hold them, and we can put in policy, we're not gonna hold them.
So if I can summarize this so we can, it's been good conversation. I think there's two tracks that I'm hearing. One is we would like to get the questions that you had originally
Yep.
wanted to present to the group so that we could have those reviewed. But also, maybe the suggestions on the operational procedures that would be in parallel to that, that you feel would be appropriate. And then we could research that along with what Ben has presented, and we can then come back with looking at the answers, the legal answers from our attorneys, look at the operational things, look how they complement or not with what Ben's, and then we could have a further discussion on it.
Yep, no,
Are we at that point?
yeah, I was gonna suggest kind of the same thing as, I guess, are you willing to, kind of draft those operating procedures? So that it could be, so it could be reviewed in line with this discussion.
Yeah, it ain't gonna be tomorrow though, because I'm in the middle of talking with all these chiefs right now, seeing what they're doing. And seeing what their direction is, cause this is all kind of new to me.
Yeah.
And this isn't like I got a lot of experience with this, so I'm trying to do something that's gonna meet the objective of us not being in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Because we do have a lot of folks that come here, and I don't have time for all this. They gotta do it, not me.
Well, and the other thing is, what you present is not a final. It's a working document that should be updated as we move forward. So I think, but we need a starting point, and I think Ben's did a good job in presenting, a point of view. It raises counterpoints that we need to address. And so I think that makes sense if we work through this. It's not gonna be one more meeting type event. It's gonna be several, but I think the dialogue has been excellent. So do we need anything to put that in motion or just what we've said?
I don't feel like we need a specific motion. I think what I'm hearing is that Fred's going to send us an email with his specific questions, and then he's gonna speak.
I don't have no questions.
Well,
I thought you had specific questions that you wanted reviewed by the attorney.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what we can do. You know what I mean, if she wants to make a decision on that, then she can. But I'm gonna write you out a bunch of guidelines, cause that's what I came down to at the end, because I read it flat out. Don't support the town putting a policy in place. I don't support that, but I can put guidelines in place with the department that will say what we will do.
Didn't you have a couple questions or you wanted to answer in the beginning? I mean,
Yeah, does this make us a sanctuary city?
Yeah, so something that was about,
well, that was,
That's a town question, that's not a Fred question.
no, but we were gonna have to ask the attorney. for
You guys can ask her that, because that's.
And if
about
she's
that.
aware of any repercussions that would prohibit, or that would hinder your relationship with
That's
other
something you
federal
guys ought to
entities.
be finding out. I'm gonna write you a sample set of guidelines, but I think that's more appropriate.
Do you have those questions?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we have heard his concern, so I think if we have some guidelines that you are willing to draft that we could take to the attorney, I think it can help tease out where the lines between how do we make sure that we can address the concerns that have been brought forward, kind of on both sides, provide the protection for citizens and provide protection for the police department in a way that I think you have articulated very well. Anything else on this issue for now?
Yeah, regardless of whether we put this in as a town policy versus a guideline, which the way the guideline is being described, honestly, I'm not entirely sure I understand where the delineation needs to come into play. If effectively the guideline is gonna say everything that this policy would say, you know, why do one over the other? I'd be curious to know the benefits of the pro and the con there. But also that it sounds like, from my understanding of it, pretty much is what effectively all this does is lays out that, you know, you would have to behave in accordance with our constitution and make appropriate arrests.
Do that every day.
Correct. So my concern though, is that the people that we're trying to prevent pushing you into a bad situation are not following that.
Right.
So I think it's, you know, it would be important for any town to, whether it be in a guideline, whether it be in a policy, establish that every employee, regardless of law enforcement or, you know, just municipal employee, is bound to follow the Constitution.
Then put your policy in place then.
Well,
No,
whichever
I
one,
just agreed with you.
Yeah, no, I know,
Put your
whichever
policy in
one-
place, And let's see
whichever
where
one
the
comes
cards
to them.
fall. I don't have no clue where they'll fall.
yeah, no, I don't
But
either. I think that's why I think it would be important for,
Okay.
whether it's a guideline or a policy, however, just that we make it known that we
That
are a
makes it
town.
work easier for me. Put it right in place. I just hope that we don't get any fallback from it.
Yeah, I mean, I would too. I would be curious to know what additional fallback anyone in Maine could possibly receive at this point in time, but.
You're already living it.
Right.
There's no grant money, there's no
Yeah.
nothing.
So I guess, I mean, that in my argument would be, my more cynical argument would be, then what's left to lose? We already don't have state funding, we already don't have this or that, we might as well take a stand, but.
I'm just giving you my viewpoint of it.
Yeah.
Take it
And
for
I
what it
understand.
is.
Yeah, that's what we're here for.
Then I'd like to make a recommendation as of today, you find somebody else to work in your law enforcement agency. Because I don't do this stuff and I don't see no sense in it. And if you need me to resign from my whole job, I will. I will. I've said it right here. It's on recording. Because I will not be part
Turn it off.
of all these political things that are going on. It's ruining the friggin' place. And I have to sit here, I had to go through all the BLM stuff. I even went and got certified as a civil rights investigator through the Attorney General's office, looking out for people's rights. And we gotta do this. You think that I'm gonna do that?
Fred, nobody has.
I'm not gonna be part of it, I'm sorry. I won't have nothing to do with it. No disrespect. That's your one. South.
Okay. Well,
No, I don't think it did go south quick. I think that he was stating an opinion that he feels that he was undermined. And so, just with that, we can move forward. He felt attacked and he felt
Well, I'm not
that
sure
we
that's-
aren't providing him, that I'm saying what his feelings are.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's.
I think it's time to move on from this
Yeah.
topic for tonight. I
Yep.
don't think it is necessarily settled. I am happy to have a follow-up conversation with Fred, in the hopes that we can, that he can talk about the standing, developing a standard operating procedure in a way that he's comfortable with and revisit the issue, because I think it is something that clearly it's cared a lot about on many sides from the community. And I
Yep.
think the good news is that I have not heard any disagreement in materially what we want to have happen. It's a matter of, how we codify it in a way that makes everyone feel comfortable.
Clarification for a policy that has to go to town vote, correct?
An ordinance
Since the
needs to
policy,
go to
only
town
an
vote.
ordinance would go out. This wouldn't be an ordinance. Are you talking about, is he talking about perhaps in his SOPs, his standard operating procedures?
No, I was asking if we decided that we were going to make it a policy that we're putting into effect. Do we need, should this go to the town as opposed to five of us?
It probably should.
I think it does.
If it were to get to that point, I would say.
If it were to be one,
The policy, then I think it should go to the town for a town vote to have it put in. I know that you, to put it into policy, instead of having the five of us do it, I think
well,
that
the
it is something that should
selectmen's
go to the town.
policies, and then that's an ordinance. There's no policy.
Right, so it would require us adding it as an ordinance to have it go to town vote.
So that means that would go through hearings and people would come and talk about it, and then you would vote. It in or out. It won't be at this town meeting, because it's not enough time, so.
Well, I don't think we're close to having that level of discussion and formality as far as ordinance goes yet. I mean, I think clearly it's a good, important discussion, and hopefully we can get everybody back around the table so that we can finish it in a way that feels responsive and allows us all to move forward and feel like we are supported in the jobs that we have to do.
Shay, this is
Yep,
Lauren.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm very, very hesitant, would make Fred more comfortable. Rather than bringing it back to a larger discussion, I'm wondering if it could have a little bit, some people that can maybe work on it in terms of, you know, a private discussion, and then bring it back to the select board.
Yeah, I am happy to have a conversation with Fred. I really think that if it's a standard operating procedure for his department, that he would need to be the one to draft that and bring it forward. So
Yeah.
I am happy to have a conversation to see if he is willing to continue to pursue that path and what support he might need to help move that forward.
Yeah, I definitely meant that Fred would do that piece of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there may be a facilitation of bringing these concepts together, making a dialogue between one or two people and Fred might be helpful. And it could be you, Shay. I'm just trying to not put more things on you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate that. And I think right now I just want to make sure that we can get Fred back to the table.
I also just think it's important to note that the original wording of the letter that I sent, it had wording about all town employees in their interactions with immigration enforcement. It was not just specific to Fred. And I know that there's a lot of emotion behind this. Everybody, you know, everything is up in arms. And I think if we can make the wording as specific as humanly possible, that is going to take out a lot of the emotion behind it. Because I don't want Fred to feel like he's a political pawn, and I don't want anyone, you know, that is contrary to what is going on in the overall conversation in America right now. That is not the objective here at all. It's to, one, safeguard Islesboro from lawsuits from people who have been detained for an unnecessary period of time. And two, to just have a set of guidelines for basically following the Constitution, because I think there's an education component where a lot of people don't know what their rights are. And it's just that simple. It really is not a political statement, in as much as it cannot be.
All right. With that, let's move on to the next item of new business.
One thing, just a big thank you to the select board. I know this is, it's long and tiring work. I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys all for coming. It is nice to have people bring stuff before us and to have a thoughtful discussion.
Thank you, guys.
Then, next time bring Wesley.
I will. Bring it next time. Got the harder bargain.
All right, let's finish up new business and then we'll bring it back to upcoming meetings and subcommittee reports. Draft 2025 Islesboro looking ahead. This is in your packet. My understanding about this is just that recognizing we have not
Seems like we
reviewed,
just did it.
edited the looking ahead document, and it is time for us to make sure that we are doing that again. So I don't know if there's anybody in particular. Lauren has her hand raised.
I move that we accept the report as written, and thank you so much, Shay.
I actually have not done anything to it.
Right?
I thought it was yeah, I thought you did some editing.
No.
No,
just
I
a
have-
draft.
I have not done any, I have not done it at all. This was Janet's gentle way of saying it's time to look at it again. So if anyone is willing to take a first stab at editing it, I would be happy to have you do that. Otherwise, Steve?
Cool.
Thank you, Steve. It is great. Just let us know when you are ready, when you have a draft for us to review, okay? And, we will keep it, I guess maybe let Janet and I know, and then we'll add it under old business when
I'll
it's,
send it
when
to you
it's
in a
ready.
Word document.
That'd be great.
Thank you. All right, let's go back to upcoming meetings and subcommittee reports. We've got planning board April 28th and town meeting April 17th.
Are we back?
It's May 17th. January 17th. I think Pete, you had mentioned you had
Yeah.
something for Harbor
I have
Committee.
two notes from the Harbor Committee. The first one is a request from the Harbor Committee to have us communicate with Kristen Collins. For clarification on the actual legal borders of our town acreage. And our surrounding waters, like, as to where the harbor master and harbor masters have any actual authority. There's some issues with some derelict floats and boats in the past that I think ongoing. That appear to be kind of just outside our realm of control, and so we would like some guidance as to what, like, truly. Where our line is drawn.
Yeah, she did email me and ask me about, because I said, well, really, it's only Grindle Point and Seal Harbor.
I think they're wanting to know.
How far out in the water can they go?
Yeah.
They just wanna know if there's like, where does, say, Lincolnville's jurisdiction take over,
Oh, God.
which I. Am not fluent in how the harbor situation
Yeah.
works out, imagine it's sort of a standard act, there's gotta be some
Point
element of distance.
And Seal Harbor, that's it.
But that's all the places they have
Yeah.
their control there. So. The other thing they have is a discussion for later on down the line. Which is them adding additional language to their town-owned mooring ordinances. It sounds like right now we have a waiting list system where when a mooring becomes clear, there's a process they pay for it. What they would like to add is language that would allow the transfer from owner to owner of a mooring that becomes vacant. Apparently, there's an issue with possibly a familial situation happening. There's one individual attempting to pass down to another.
Yeah.
And they have can put together suggested language, but because it would be the ordinance change, we'd have to have a town meeting. It's too late for that for this one. So.
And that's hard to monitor too.
Well, they're working on a contracting with a company to help with mooring monitoring.
Mooring.
Where they are and who's paying dues and the dues don't exist yet, hopefully. So. They would just like to discuss that and perhaps run it also by Kristen as to what the best way to word that would be, of how do we set this up in such a way that we could have an owner just pass along to another owner rather than. But. That's one of few things around that I personally like. If we've been doing it this way for so long,
Yeah,
like
I mean-
I would be hesitant to really push to change it and just sort of handle it on a case by case basis. But I think the individual in question. Or one of the people in question is a real stickler for ordinances and rules. So they wanna make sure they have their bases covered to just say like. If they turn around and hit it with we do this on a case by case basis, they expect somebody to turn around then and say, yeah, well, your ordinance says this, so that's what,
Yeah.
But that was it, just that they would like some clarification on town acreages and. If that's that, then I'll pass that information along and Dylan.
It's right in the ordinance. It
Dylan will
spells
have
out.
to, yeah, again, though, I think they're looking for some amount of distance. I don't think they just wanna be like, well, it's Brindle Point Harbor or Steel Harbor, I think they want.
There is language in there about from this point to, I've seen maps at some point that basically is like
That's always what,
that,
and there's
or
something
and
about
like that,
more
or.
frontage in here as to what is usable public land. I won't say too much about the operations of that meeting, but it got a little confusing on a few different occasions and. This is the best that I've gotten together.
So, I mean, it sounds like on a couple of different fronts, that we should anticipate some ordinance work potentially
least-
coming out of the Harbor
At
Committee
least,
this year.
at least a vote on upcoming language that they would like to present to the town.
And if they
They have
want
all this
additional
area
clarity
for-
on the.
Sort of,
Oh.
I haven't worked on that yet.
Okay, so when I see
Good.
that. Talk with the
I
town.
think they want to know, like, if they have any jurisdiction around the perimeter of the island for, derelict floats,
Right.
things
Yeah.
like that.
So-
And not just in Seal Harbor or Grindle Point.
They'd have to change the ordinance. And that would be a hard pass.
I would
Okay.
suggest, if at all possible, and not to like put some stupid 1 sentence email on your plate. If you could just give Kristen Thomas to say that, I think it would be, I think it would help them feel better about, they have a lot of back and forth. about
Whether they-
Interpreting this one way or interpreting it, just like, you could just have her say like, this is where your boundary lies. Even if you tell her to tell them,
Well,
just so that they can have like a
Up top,
real,
well, yeah, boundaries are.
that's all. I know it's, yeah, and your answer makes perfect
Yeah.
sense, but.
It's good to have clarity about what
They're
is
gonna-
now, so that if
they're gonna
we
want-
wanna change it, that we have clarity about why any recommended change would happen.
I think they need to have a lesson in their ordinance, maybe
I
go through it, and that's
think
hard for
they-
everybody to understand it and read it, but.
My first big proposal to them would be to meet more than once every 3 months. I
I
can't,
know you
put nothing-
said
I
that, I know.
can't figure out how anything's getting done with them, but things seem to happen. Things seem to happen in the background that's another issue with them.
Yeah.
Things happen in the background and we get to these meetings and then there's like 2 months worth of work that Ken's done.
Yeah,
Like, oh, well, okay.
it's Ken.
It's a few things.
So let me ask you on the mooring, and I don't know, 2 minutes.
Oh, take time.
No,
I'll say, well, I will put spot out anything that
I
I
don't
can
understand.
remember.
So how, like, they want to charge for all moorings?
They were
fee.
proposing, they have been proposing a fee, and I hope that they do continue looking into it. I believe they would like to, they're realistically can only start with town mooring. I don't think that they're gonna. If they even don't even have, they don't even have like jurisdiction over that.
Right.
What they're working on now, I think they've sort of transitioned more toward just getting a record of where all the moorings are. More so than collecting dues for a mooring that's here, there, but for use in the municipal harbors.
Yeah, like I have a mooring in Camden, and I pay for, I have to buy the mooring, the
Yeah, we-
stone, the chain,
Yeah,
and maintenance on it every year, but I pay a fee to the town because I'm in their field.
Right.
But I was wondering, like, I also have a mooring up at Riders Cove.
Yeah.
I was like, how the hell are you gonna charge me for something that's above the water,
Well, that's,
I think that's where, and I imagine the Harbor Masters Association or whatever it's called, I think probably has some guidance from them about that, because I think it may provide protections to the town in assuming like every mooring is supposed to have Army Corps, an Army Corps permit if you want to get down to the letter of the law. So there's, I think it's a complicated situation that I think
I just wondered.
it makes sense to have the harbor committee look at before we,
yeah, the big driver for the mooring fee is, of course, someone pays $20 mooring fee once a year when they watch their taxes go up.
No, I saw that, and
Exponentially,
that part so anyway, let's move on, I just wondered.
Yeah.
all right. Janet, hit us with your report.
first I want to show you a picture of Lorena's Cove,
Yeah,
which will be done. You can pass it around.
What is that?
When is it,
So-
when will it be done?
Friday.
Excellent.
Friday, over the weekend, John put in that big 5-foot culvert, so we had to close the road for just one day, but he's been so good during the whole project, keeping a lane open. So I really appreciate that.
can I ask a question about East Shore? I just actually coincidentally just drove by it today and it looks fantastic. But have the barriers been left down getting to Charlotte's from just south of Impey's, just north of Impey's? Are they just there because it's the end of the snow season, they haven't been removed yet? Or-
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but really, there's.
I just parked up there and walked
Yeah,
down
no,
and came
you
back,
can.
but I realized like as I walked that it didn't look like there was any real reason for them to be up, but.
Yeah, really, there's no reason to drive down there, in my opinion, just because where are you gonna go? We're gonna go
Well,
up.
right, I didn't want to,
Turn
the
around.
particular car I was in anyway, wasn't gonna make it in any tough
No,
ground as it is, but
but we have not, yeah, we did that,
Just-
to keep
okay.
people driving down there and getting stuck.
yeah, no, as I walked down the road, it looks great down here.
Good, see, that's
Nice and
why, it looks
smooth,
good,
and
no
it
one's
looks
been
wonderful.
driving on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So that's my best news. Right, so I've given you, from September 20th, approved municipal building project committee minutes. January 16th, harbor committee. January 21st, library trustees minutes. March 11th, Energy Committee minutes, and 4/3, Emergency Ferry Pass Force minutes. There was some correspondence. You've got an email from Dave Kinney explaining what they do with their harbor money, where our 15,000 goes, all there.
That was awesome. Very good to see. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I was glad, he was glad to do that. So it was immigrant. I wanted to remind you that today, Marge Hall, our auditor, was at the school, but tomorrow she'll be here and Friday. All day, so if anybody wants to stop in and say hello to her or ask her anything, or she will be here. And I was going to, before you leave, pass out, I have a copy of my employment agreement that I'm just gonna hand out, and then, which expires in June, that you can look over and we can plan another time. Rochelle wants to, whatever she wants to do.
Basically, it's time for contract renegotiation, so we wanna circulate the contract, existing contract so that we can negotiate.
Yeah, I know. And the other thing I was gonna bring up, I would like the board to go at the end of the meeting, go into an executive session about a general assistance case that I have. Executive session. And that's all for me.
Any questions for Janet? No other correspondence, no other?
Sorry, Janet, one thing, I have a suggestion, I think Jordy's, what I'd like to see. As opposed to Jordy, you know, or I don't care who, but I'd rather see a task list. You know, for the month, let's say, or something, and then just what was done, what wasn't done. And, you know, and we don't even need reasoning at this point why it's not, you know, it's just like, what are we doing?
Okay.
You know, and just so we're not wandering the woods like, you know, when summer's coming up, like, it's like, this is the tasks that we've got to do on a weekly basis. These are the ones to complete, these are the new ones that are coming on, and just, that just should be a flowing list where it takes 2 to 3 minutes to go through. Anybody has questions, I think that'd be more effective than, you know, having what we're doing today.
Yeah, because Dave does give him a list every week,
Right,
and he compiles those, so then he can just
yeah,
scratch.
just, I mean, it's literally, you know, here's what it is, here's the completed, here's to do still, here's the new ones, and it just keeps flowing.
Yeah, I will tell Dave and I'll tell Jordan.
And just, let's try it a couple times and see how
And
it
he can
works.
just print it out, or I can print it out and bring it in and
Yeah.
submit, yeah.
Anyway, that's all.
All right, no other questions? No correspondence, no other business. We'll approve warrant number 22. Do I have a motion? Second? Any questions, discussion? All those in favor, Lauren,
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Pete? Shay, aye. All right, we also have 2 appointments tonight,
3, actually.
okay, oh.
Your mouthpiece is too much.
Trisha, Brenda, and, huh?
Brenda.
Oh,
I
Brenda.
noticed that too. It's-
Unless he
that's-
spelled it wrong, did he spell it wrong?
It should be a Z.
It should be a Z, it's Brenza.
Oh, it is-
Unless there is in fact a.
No, it is-
No.
It is correct on the
Good, it was me.
appointment. And Terry Sanderson to the cemetery committee. Do I have a motion to approve the slate?
So move.
Seconds?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, Lauren,
Aye.
Melissa,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
Jay, aye. All right, make sure you sign all 3 when it comes around. And I have no other comments tonight. Lauren, any comments?
No comments.
Melissa?
No.
Pete?
Oh.
All right, then I would move that the board go into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056F to discuss general assistance case number 1 FY 25.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All those in favor? Lauren, Melissa?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Pete? Jay, aye. Thank you to everyone who has hung on online with us. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, Shay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Can Lauren stay online or